Hi, and welcome to the Truth and Liberty Livecast. We are so glad that you took time to join us tonight. Do you know this is going to be a great livecast? This has been a really big week in the news, and we have Dr. Lance Wallnau joining us. Welcome, Lance.
Welcome. It's good to see you, Karen.
Good to see you too. And I have Richard Harris, who is our practical government school coordinator and an attorney who is an expert on the midterms. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Karen. It's great to be here.
Well, we've got a lot to cover tonight, and I just want to thank Lance because he's actually getting on a flight in 45 minutes. He dropped his bags off to make sure that he was on this live cast. So thank you so much, Lance. We really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that. I always love these broadcasts. That's why I like to make them.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Well, we've got a lot of information to share with you tonight. And first of all, I want to welcome people from all over the world. Lance and Richard, we have people from Indiana, Texas, California, Ohio, Colorado, Michigan, Pennsylvania. I think we have almost 50 states that are represented tonight. It's amazing. And we've got an international audience. I'm always just so blessed by the number of people that tune in from all over the world. And tonight we have the UK, Canada, South Africa, Philippines, Italy. Wow. We've got Hong Kong, Northern Ireland, Cameroon, and Tasmania. So welcome. Yes, that's welcome. Great. We are so glad that you are here. So we just want to tell you a little bit about Truth and Liberty. Do you know, you might be watching us on Facebook or on Andrew's website, but I want to encourage you to actually join us on truthandliberty.net. You can watch the live stream, and also a lot of the links and a lot of the articles that we have are posted on the Truth and Liberty website. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a lot of information for you. We call it a truth hub, so truthandliberty.net. Now, if you want to view the previous live cast, you can go to the archives link on the Truth and Liberty website. And if you want to connect with Lance Wallnau, you can go to lancewallnau.com. He's got a lot of good information on there, Lance. You have a lot of good blogs you update frequently. We want to let you know about the upcoming Charis Business Summit. It is June 11th through the 13th, and it is going to be awesome. We've got Randy Forbes, the former congressman, that is joining us. And if you're interested in attending that, you can still get tickets. Go to charissummit.com. Also, if you have not yet viewed Gospel Truth TV, you need to check it out. It is Andrew and Friends. It is grace and God's unconditional love and grace. It has Andrew, Creflo Dollar, Kenneth Copeland, and a lot of the people from the ministry. You can watch it 24/7 at gospeltruth.tv. So I don't know if you noticed, Lance, but we've got a Truth and Liberty mug, a new addition to our platform here. And actually, we are going to give away a Truth and Liberty mug to someone in the audience. And to be eligible to win, you can go ahead to truthandliberty.net and you can subscribe and you'll be eligible for the giveaways. And last week, we actually had 3 winners, actually 4 winners. We had Bill Federer on, and it was a really good broadcast. And our winners from last week are Linda Bryden, we've got Sean Anderson, Deborah Henderson, and John Copeland. Congratulations. Now, if you want to ask a question, we are here to take questions. We're going to take it about a half hour into the program. I'm already receiving questions, by the way, Richard and Lance. People are ready to go. And so if you are on Facebook or if you're watching it on the website, just go ahead and enter your question in the chat area or in the timeline. And we've got people that are standing by. They'll be communicating with you, and they will send those questions here to this iPad. So we're excited to get started tonight. And Lance, we were talking a little bit before the show, and there's just been a lot of interesting things happening in the arts and entertainment mountain this last week.
Yeah, well, we had the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is the classic exercise of freedom of speech. And the press loves to have that. And of course, for 8 years, they had an affectionate, playful kind of environment with President Obama, who had a lot of favor with the media. And of course, what you've got is a totally acidic relationship between media and Donald Trump, because for obvious reasons. He's accusing them of fake news, and they're busy trying to get him impeached, so they're not getting along with each other. And he decided not to do the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And what's interesting is, in a classic moment of Trumpian innovation, he decided he was going to go to Michigan instead. And instead of being in Washington, D.C., he went to Washington, Michigan. And he conducted a live rally and had NBC contracted to broadcast it. And so from 7 to 9, he proceeded to literally give every one of his enemies a thumping right there live. And it was quite hilarious, actually, because he was on his teleprompter and reading his teleprompter. And then once he came to a new subject, he'd leave the teleprompter, and you could see he just got animated. I mean, and this guy is just so fascinating that I just recorded, Karen, about 3 minutes of it, just for my own audience, to let my own media group know what it looks like. And I kid you not, we had I watched the people that were coming on. It was like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people. And I kept waiting for it to peak and start to drop off.
Yeah.
And it just kept going. So it just never left. People didn't want, and I realized I can't turn the camera off now. And I was just playing it off my screen because they'd all be upset. So I just was doing commentary, and I'm narrating what, I said, okay, he's on he's on message right now. Oops, he's off message. Watch what happens now. And he would go off on these rabbit trails.
Oh my
At
goodness.
one point, it was so hilarious. He's talking to them about their own senator and how their own senator, voted against his tax bill. And they're all going, boo. It's kind of like, it's an interesting kind of audience interaction with Trump meetings. And he said, your own senator doesn't want any immigration reform, doesn't want a wall. They're all going, boo. And then this is the moment, this classic Trump. He looks at the audience and he says, and you know what? It's your fault. Your fault because you keep voting her in. And he starts to rebuke the audience and they all go, oh, like that. And he says, we got to straighten that out. And they all promise they're going to do better. It's hilarious. So he's like, he's upset with them. He's upset with everybody. He's taking on the world right there. But at one moment, it was so endearing in a way because I say he gets renewed in his strength by the environment. Sometimes you have to be in proximity to people that love you.
Yes.
And so he needs these rallies because it feeds like a camel. It's like a watering hole. You could see him drawing strength out of the interaction. So he can go back into the, when you're in the swamp, you got to hold your breath and go underwater.
Yes.
He comes out into these rallies and he's getting oxygen in the tank.
Oh, wow.
But he did a masterful job of articulating exactly what's at stake right now and what his administration's done. And the audience interrupted him, Karen, at one point and started saying, no bell, no bell, no, but because of North Korea.
Wow.
And you could see in that rare moment, I've seen Mr. Trump this way at least 3 times. You catch him in the unguarded moment. And he was like literally stunned because he was awkward. He didn't know, he wasn't expecting that. And what they're saying is the Nobel Peace Prize because nobody expected. This is the guy of the unexpected. Trump is revealing the God of the unexpected. Yeah. No one expected him to win, and nobody expected North Korea to denuclearize.
That's right.
To walk across the border into South Korea, to shake hands, and to form a unified nation. And I'm telling you what.
Incredible.
Trump, in a classic moment, lacking humility, but totally lovable. Said, people are saying, well, how did this happen? Who did what? And he basically said, you know who it was? It was me.
Oh my goodness.
Said, I did that. I honestly think everybody knows in some crazy way. His Twitters, you've got a bomb, I got a bigger bomb, you got a button, I've got a bigger button, mine works, yours doesn't. There was so, in a sense, adolescent that it connected. And so what we have now is something unfolding. We're going to keep looking at it, but I'll tell you what, I know one thing. China, because of Mr. Trump's relationship with President Xi, China had a meeting with North Korea before this happened. Right. And I believe they got their marching orders then. that this is what's happening next, because China does not want to risk two things. A nuclear accident with North Korea. We just found out, by the way, that they set off two bombs, nuclear bombs, underneath their mountain laboratory.
Yep.
And the bomb, the second bomb, putting off a shock wave of 6.5 on a Richter scale, collapsed the mountain and destroyed the entire nuclear research facility.
Oh, my goodness.
So what they're looking for now is measuring radiation out of the mountain. And by the way, this is on the border with China. So where do you think that radiation is going to go?
Oh, China.
This is what was going on, and what the details that God himself is involved with that are behind the scenes, because we're praying. This is the thing I want our Truth and Liberty people to know. We are holding up, like walking on water right now in America. God is doing something right now that we don't deserve it, but the mercy of God is fulfilling his promise to us.
Amen.
And if we'll keep praying, and if you listen to these broadcasts and get the appropriate sense of prophetic urgency, then I believe we can continue to see a miracle, or having failed that, we will see the most unnecessary interruption of a recovery process that America's ever had. So much is on the table right now.
Oh, I agree. Lance, when I watched the film, and Richard, of the North Korea and South Korea and them walking across the borders, it just seems so genuine to me. I was really taken aback by it seemed to be almost a genuine emotion in both of those men. And so, what do you think caused them to make that decision? And did you pick up on that too, that they just seemed very happy and kind of touched about what they were doing?
Well, we don't have these emotions in our country in terms of a disunified nation. I have no idea what is going on in North Korea. None of us do.
Right.
But I could tell you this. It's the strangest thing in South Korea. If you're ever around people on Prayer Mountain, you chose Prayer Mountain there. When I'm around South Koreans, I've been with them. I've gone there to Seoul a couple of times. When they pray for North Korea, it's the strangest thing. They cry. They cry for a reunification of the land. It's as though God put in them an intercessory burden to be touched with like a family that's been separated. I watch them cry that they could be reconciled and restored. And that's why in the back of my mind, I knew when the saber rattling and the rumors of war were taking place, I thought to myself, I know the amount of prayer that's going on in South Korea, and I know how they're praying on a prayer mountain for North Korea. And I honestly believe that what you saw unfold with the two statesmen is the byproduct again of God's people in powerful, prevailing prayer for the last 30 years, praying for North Korea and for the prosperity of the North and the reunification of Korea as a family. Not as a political force, not as a democracy, but as a people that were divided being reunited.
Well, that's really interesting. One of the things that they agreed on in their little summit was bringing the families back together from the North and the South. That's like line item number 1 on the agreement. So that's a great observation.
So
there,
focus on family. And do you think the Olympics, that was interesting too, how they had the Korean teams united on the same teams, and do you see that the same way? Do you think that sort of was a leading? That's
a great observation, Karen. That's why we like you on the show, because you bring up those things the news media misses. Absolutely. That was a moment when North Korea felt remember, this guy's a little bit of an egotist.
Yes.
And they felt what it was like to be on the national sunny platform of media and not be the growling adversary, but to actually be the celebrity. And I think it scratches an itch up there that they really don't want to live in isolation. I think, unfortunately, I'm not so sure this guy's a stable bet for the future. At least he's not going to be a nuclear menace. But he's doing a charm offensive now in South Korea that is a little scary, because my perception is he may be a little wacky, but he's a leader. and he's used to shaping the environment. The only thing that shaped him was, frankly, a stronger leader who comes along and says, this is how far I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think this is going to go sideways. I think that the president of North Korea knows he cannot embarrass or play games with Donald Trump. And so I think this is really going to come out as a intervention of God and denuclearizing the greatest threat we had.
Yes.
Now, the next item is going to be Iran. And Iran is already yabbering and talking. You know why? Because they see what's coming next. They see that Donald Trump's going to swing over in that direction.
Do you know, him just standing firm, and we've talked about this, he literally has no fear of man. He, you know, he doesn't need to be doing this, right? Financially, he doesn't need the paycheck. And it's amazing what he's been able to accomplish just from standing up for the things that he feels is right and not backing down.
Right.
He is a wrecking ball. And he's
You said it.
Thank God, you know, Isaiah 45 says that God said, I've anointed Cyrus. I've anointed this foreigner, literally for the Jews, for the sake of my people.
Right.
And he will break in pieces the gates of iron, and he will straighten out the crooked places. I mean, we ought to just go back and read Isaiah 45, 1 and 2 for the 45th president and see God said that he was going to loose the belts of kings through this leader, which means he will undo the military offensive capacity of every enemy of his nation. So I don't care whether it's Iran or North Korea or Syria or Russia or China. During this man's administration, there's an authority right now that is exerted to loose the belts of offensive capacity to hurt the United States. May we have the wisdom not to take the belt off of the man who is disarming these other powers.
Amen.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Do you know, in the Arts and Entertainment Mountain, it was kind of an interesting week as far as tweets and Diamond and Silk. They were at Congress and they were testifying, and that was really interesting. Just really stating that they felt that they were definitely being censored and they were labeled as liberals on Facebook. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't see that.
Yes. And so I was reading an article, it's actually up on truthandliberty.net, and they're saying that they were labeled liberals and they felt that that was really affecting their audience. And the answer back was, we can't do anything about it. We can't change your label. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
That was
Crazy.
amazing.
That's a lot better than taking their Facebook page down.
Yes,
They did do.
they
And
did.
thank God for Senator Cruz and a few other people that made an issue out of it. But if you watch the hearings, I encourage everybody to go ahead and watch a sample of it. I think I might have it on my Facebook page. But they were being just like the left does. They were being pushed and semi-slandered as the cross-examination was going on. Well, you can make money off of this, don't you? Don't you make money? In other words, implying that you're not really in this for the belief system. You're just milking it for money. And man, these two women came right back and said, if I was a liberal, you wouldn't be doing this to me right now. And if I,
That's awesome.
bam, they just, I'll tell you what, every man in that room just went, oh boy, back up. And it was a beautiful exhibition of confident, powerful pushback when somebody's trying to paint you into a corner.
You know, Richard, from a legal perspective, with all that was going on with Facebook and the things we're talking about, how do we see that from a legal perspective when things are censored? And do you have any comments on that?
Well, I don't know that any existing law puts Facebook in any legal trouble, as long as they're, I mean, the potential legal trouble that Zuckerberg faced was, you know, the possibility of lying to Congress. So hopefully he told the truth in his testimony. But, you know, it does highlight a fundamental issue in our culture and society, which is freedom of speech. And it's the Facebook hearings with Zuckerberg and then Diamond and Silk are really highlighting, I think, how the left and the, if you will, the ungodly worldview that's becoming so dominant, the PC culture, is really trying to snuff out different points of view. And I think if you're watching the news right now, like For example, Kanye West
Yes.
is tweeting his support for Donald Trump. I love Donald Trump. And he said, I love what
brother.
Candace Owens, he calls him his brother, and all of that, and how that, it's like a volcano. The pressure to express our views is just seeping out through the cracks. And it's fun to watch. And I think it's kind of promising too, as to what's going on in our culture. I saw a poll today. A Reuters article said that the most recent poll of millennials shows a 9% shift in favor of Republicans since 2016. So I think there's some awesome stuff going on in America right now.
I do too. And, Lance, what do you think the root is of this? It's almost like a bullying that's happening when people are standing up for Trump or standing up for, Christian values. So, how do you view that? What's the root of that?
Well, I think it's tactical. And if you look at how the left operates, people that are students of Solzhenitsyn and Marxism recognize the intimidation and bullying tactics. And frankly, it's characteristic of both Marxist or fascist revolutions to intimidate your opposition into silence. And this is an immediate disadvantage to Christians and to conservatives, because you've never seen a conservative riot. You can't imagine a group of conservatives dressing up with ski masks like Antifa and breaking limousine windows at Starbucks doors. So conservatives and Christians are. What's that?
Which happened to you? Oh no, your limousine was started on fire.
Yeah, right. They did everything. That was Antifa. I guarantee it wasn't. The faith movement doing that. So what we have is the tactic of, if you shout and label, you will embarrass. And it's true. If somebody comes up to you and starts yelling at you and threatening you, that's bullying. Yes. And the left does it all the time, but doesn't recognize it because when they're doing it, they think it's justified. So they're silencing the hate is what they think they're doing. Yeah. So free speech, to Richard's point, is what was happening. For instance, you're talking about the arts and entertainment now. The left uses bullying as a tactic and intimidating as a mechanism to both push back opposition and to shift the focus of people and what they're thinking about. Now, the White House press correspondents, press had a correspondence dinner in Washington, second one they've had since President Trump's been in office. This is the second time the president did not go. And unfortunately, Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Huckabee were absolutely treated viciously by Michelle Wolf at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And I'll tell you how bad it was. It was so bad that Rob Reiner, who's the son of Carl Reiner, who is a famous, consistently outspoken California liberal, he said, in his own opinion, that Michelle Wolf's routine, he could tell it really didn't go over, which is a nice way of a Hollywood entertainer liberal to say it bombed. And so what she had done was she had made fun. This is the inconsistency of the left. It's kind of crazy this way. They've got the women's movement, but she mocked characteristics of what Huckabee's Sarah Huckabee looks like, and attacked her in such ways that it actually demeaned a lot of the principles of what the women's movement stands for. But there again, it doesn't matter how you treat women. If it's a conservative, you could beat them up. And so that hypocrisy and that viciousness, Karen, was played out in such a strong way that it even caused people that are just, you could say, people that get the fact that it's a correspondence dinner. Yep. They say you're supposed to, singe, not burn when you're doing your roast, but it's getting more vicious all the time. And there's a number of people that feel that it's going too far. And I think that's good. I think sometimes when we pray for God to intervene, the way he does it is by letting the truth of the situation be exhibited and sometimes unmasking the reality of what's there so that people can see what's really going on. And that is an answer to prayer when that happens.
Oh, amen. That's really good, Lance. I mean, for the first time, I had heard about Candace Owens, but honestly, I had not really taken time to study and kind of see what was happening there. But I watched a YouTube interview with her today, and she went through exactly what you are describing. She was a liberal, and she was, I think it was an anti-bullying campaign that she was trying to introduce. And boy, did she ever get it from somebody trying to bully her to not go forth with that.
Wow. Well, Candace Owens, Kanye West. What's interesting about that is, as Richard said, there's that 9% in New England, of all places. When you get a 9% shift in millennials in the Northeast, you know there's a trend potentially happening there.
Right.
But what's interesting is these are African-American leaders, thought leaders.
Right.
And what is astonishing for thoughtful people that are in the African-American community is Donald Trump is attempting to do an economic turnaround in terms of unemployment within the African-American community. And so far, he has done more in 1 year than President Obama did in 8 years, or Clinton did, or Bush did. And all that he's saying is, give me a chance, because Trump, so far from being racist, everybody knows the man has a big ego and he wants to win. And his goal for winning is to prove that he can turn around America's inner cities. He wants to do that. No other politician wants that. They want power, but without a solution.
Right.
Trump wants the solution because it gratifies his sense of grand success. So when Kanye comes out and says what he says, and when conservative thought leaders as women, or Diamond and Silk, listen to the pattern we're looking at here.
Yes.
When the African-American community dares to rise up and say, I am not going to be intimidated by groupthink, I think differently. The moment that they say that, if they get piled on, it causes those that are watching to become thoughtful themselves and say, what's going on here? Why can't people have their own opinion? Isn't that actually what America is? And that's where the hope for the future is. It's in that fault line right there.
I agree. And I just pulled out the article that Richard was referencing. And it's so interesting because we talk about millennials a lot. I mean, even, we just discuss it when we go out to dinner and things as a group. And, that group is very thoughtful and they are so amazing at researching. And so as I was reading this article, they were interviewing millennials, and what the millennials were saying is that, look, they're not tied to being a Democrat or a Republican. Our generation is more tied to that because that's just what we've always been. But because of their willingness to research, their curiosity, they want to think on their own. The things that they're coming out with is they're looking at the jobs. They're looking at the facts of the things that Donald Trump has done, how their lives have been impacted for the better, and they're beginning to come out and speak for themselves and think for themselves rather than get behind what we would call a tribe mentality.
And what's still sobering for us is the two data points that came out in that survey is they've been so toxically assaulted with negativity towards Donald Trump that even though he's doing things that they think are successful, their overall approval ratings of him are down because Saturday Night Live, all the comedians, all the Hollywood celebrities that have a tremendous influence in terms of opinion shaping, that he's turned millennials off to Donald Trump. And this is a tragedy because the other thing the left has succeeded in turning millennials off on is loving their own nation. The other data point is that the millennials statistically do not actually like their country because the Marxist educational system trains you to see the nation's success not based upon the blessing of God or the power of innovation or our ability to resolve differences and move forward in terms of progress faster than other nations, which is true, but rather they attribute all our success in some bizarre logic that really could be refuted to taking the soil from the Native American first peoples that were here, the Indians that were here. And so that one thing right there is what they point out as being the crime at the root of our prosperity. And I want to suggest to you that we have a battle, and we need to take it seriously, of re-articulating who America is, what America's destiny is, and what makes America great in the first place, so that we can recapture that ground. Because there's nothing worse than having somebody turn a child against a parent, or in the case of a tragedy of divorce, to see a parent that is poisoning the children against the other parent. And that's exactly what the left is doing in order to have power with the next generation voting bloc. They're poisoning the youth against the parent.
Wow. And that's happening through the education mountain, through arts and entertainment. And so, how important is it that we begin? We've had some victories actually with In God We Trust being brought back in now to Arizona. It was in Tennessee. And so there's some movement there. But how much of this do you think, Lance, is related to the Bible being removed from our education system?
There's no doubt that has a direct effect, just as like the Ten Commandments, because these are symbolic. And the symbols mean something. Even if 9 out of 10 people can quote what half of the 10 Commandments are, the very symbolism of a law that judges man is what maintains a moral society. Remove all of these images of laws and ultimate reality, and what you end up with is what we call the postmodern era, which is there is no reality, and therefore you might be a male or a female. Or you might want to have one spouse or 3 spouses. Or you can have the same gender spouse. And what happens is you introduce an element of anarchy. Where there is actually law and science. And so what we have to do is we really have to recover the art of, like, what I love about Jordan Peterson, someone your son introduced me to. Recover the art. Ben Shapiro has this ability. Recover the art of presenting a reason for the hope that is in us. And not just a Bible hope, but being able to provide, the word reason is logismos, is the word logic. Be able to provide a wise answer to people that ask you why America is unique in history. What makes it unique in history? Why is free enterprise better than socialism? Why is capitalism better than communism? Why is it that America has had a chapter with slavery, and how did we resolve it and move our way forward? And what are the mechanisms of dialogue that produce progress in culture? We need to be able to give answers to the things that millennials are being told. It's like you said, they do think, not being given those reasons. And the data says that to a great degree, millennials are driven by feeling, which is empathy, which is why their hate crimes to them isn't an illogical thing, it's an emotional thing. And there again, we have to understand that since that's the way they're wired, we have to be able to address the head and the heart and recognize that to reach that generation, you actually have to be in dialogue with them. You can't just be talking out.
That is so true. Community and they really like to discuss. I mean, we get together with young people just within the ministry. We had a great creative meeting on Truth and Liberty. And I'm telling you, these kids, I call them kids. They don't think they're kids. They are passionate. And they are living off a life of principle from the Word of God. And I think they're so polarized, and that's what they're seeing. There is a remnant of millennials who were brought up, they understand who Jesus is, they have a good foundation, and they really purpose to live their life based on the principle of the Word of God. Now, when you look at so many of the millennial generation, they have never been taught or had a foundation even growing up with the Word of God. So they have no principle. They have no principles that they live by, and they're so subject to being convinced. And so I believe that we need to do just what we're doing tonight. We need to do a really good job of laying the foundation. And Lance, you're always bringing us back to this. We need to pray and bring it to the foundation of the Bible, the Word of God, and Jesus Christ. If we focus on that, it's as good as it gets.
Well, I agree 100% with that. And my experience with millennials and our interaction with them is that they are listening. We think older generation, they're tuned out, they're in their video games or whatever, but the truth is they're actually very aware of the communication and the dialogue and so forth. And that's why the importance of the church rising up and exerting influence, speaking the truth in the various 7 mountains is so critical.
Yes.
We just recently returned from Washington, D.C. in the Practical Government School. We took our class there, and it's incredible the rich Christian heritage of this nation. It is all over Washington, in the monuments, in the documents, in the museums. It's everywhere. And without exception, our students come away from that going, oh my gosh, I never knew.
They didn't know.
Why didn't they teach me this in school?
Amen.
I never knew that Thomas Jefferson said these things about God, or that George Washington believed in Jesus, and these kind of things.
Right.
So I agree 100%. I think this is a great time to be alive, and
agree.
this is our hour. I mean, the church is rising up and is going to retake these mountains. I believe that.
I agree. Lance, we've got a lot of questions, but will you just comment a little bit on what you're seeing and what we've talked about with marketplace ministry, and where it seems like God is really focusing on that, or opening those doors for us?
It came to me as a show. It's a great question. And are people giving us questions like this? Is that coming from the people?
Yeah, I've been asked that question, and we will definitely get to this list.
Okay, good. Okay. Karen, it was just this year when Zuckerberg was being interviewed in Facebook, and I had this kind of a jolt of realization that as a group called Veritas, Project Veritas, which has been a brilliant group of conservatives that go undercover to catch videos of people on the left when they're up to no good, and they catch it on videos because the media won't advertise to tell you what's really going on. So you have to show an actual video and force them to have to respond. And they did an interview with folks that are at Twitter, that are working at Twitter, and the employees discussed a process called shadow banning, which is the process of blocking Christian and conservative content. And so I've seen it impact me in my own data. Diamond and Silk got completely taken off until it was exposed. And what that means is, for Christians in the marketplace, here's where I'm going. We are literally not that far away from the moment when the CEO of Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or Google can shut down a platform, a voice, or a business the same way that they push the boycotts against Christian or conservative voices like Laura Ingraham on television to take away sponsors. We're not that far from the point where we're down to 3 or 4 main platforms most of us are communicating on in social media. I mean, Facebook alone, I heard someone say, has a balance sheet that is as large as the top 10th country in the world. So it's a big business right now.
Big business.
So my internet connection is unstable. Let me make the point, though, so we can stay hooked up. These are companies, Karen. They are not media platforms.
That's true. They're companies.
That's right.
And so what that means is these are businesses.
Yes.
And what's strange is right now I'm getting knocked off the air while I'm talking about it. I literally am being knocked off while I am talking. I kid you not. I've got alerts coming up telling me that my internet connection is about to become disrupted. So here's what I want to say. Christians are going to have to be the new generation of innovators in technology.
Yes.
Christians have got to start to step into, every believer has a mountain to take and an assignment. And we really need to have the next generation of Zuckerberg. This guy's a young guy.
He is.
I've been doing this ministry talking to 7 Mountains for 30 years. We should have our own people that are Christians in charge of social media platforms and new technology, because we're going to need it for the freedom of religion.
That's so good. Lance, while you're still with us, I do have a good question for you regarding marketplace ministry. And the question is, this is from a guest on chat, and they're asking, how do business owners implement 7M beyond themselves?
How do business owners implement 7M beyond themselves?
Yes.
Well, one of the first things that I really recommend is we need to look at Abraham as a great model of a businessman, patriarch, and father. Most people forget that Father Abraham was a Jewish entrepreneur. He wasn't a rabbi or a wilderness prophet.
It's true.
He wasn't an Elijah or an Ezra. He was a businessman. And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were 3 generations of family businessmen. And so you have generations of entrepreneurs creating multiple revenue streams. Mm-hmm. Abraham had 7 revenue streams. And so what I'm indirectly saying is the CEOs of companies should be thinking in the way that, let me give you an Abraham example.
Okay.
I have a friend of mine who has a company that's growing by 20% a year and has been phenomenally doing this year after year after year. And I said, what is your secret? And he basically uses, Karen, an Abraham principle. He does not treat his employees as employees. He treats them as covenant partners in the inheritance of what God gave him. Every year he meets with each employee and asks them what their dreams are for their life apart from their business, the business he's got. Are they going to be getting married? Do they have children? What are their goals for education? What do they want to do where do they want to be 5 years from now? He fathers his employees. Wow. And because he fathers them and talks about their vision and dreams, he has the 95% retention rate in employee turnover.
Wow.
And then he does this. He says, do you have any insider ideas that could help us flourish? And every year, an employee gives him an initiative that he takes and he makes them a partner in that new area. And once that happens, everybody's excited about it. And so there's an example of 7M outside of just the theoretic aspect. How does the idea of these principles work? The second thing is micro churches, which is, people don't like the term that they're in church because it sounds like it's another type of church. I'll find another word later. But there's mega church and micro church. Micro church was Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Babylon. There are many believers we have, Karen, that are in corporations or in government or in education, and they just can't come out of the closet and say, hey, I'm a Pentecostal, because it affects them. It affects where they want to go. They're a bit like Esther, in terms of being in Persia. They have to be prudent. They could be Christians, but they have to think about how do they advertise their belief system, especially in a hostile culture. But if you can find 3 or 4 other believers that are in the organization and you simply develop friendships and then you pray together,
Amen.
Those small micro groups actually become powerful portals for the Spirit of the Lord to begin to bring down revelation. And you might even be surprised to see there'll be significant conversions and influence that starts to come into an organization once you're not operating alone, but you're operating as 2, 3, or 4 believers in the mountain, moving up together. When Daniel got promoted, he took his 3 buddies and promoted them right under him. They collectively exerted influence over the government of a foreign culture. And that's where Christians are. We're in a foreign culture now. Wow. But it doesn't mean these principles don't apply.
Oh, I agree. Do you know, I was in banking for 25 years before I came out to Colorado. And in one of the banks that I worked at, we did just that. We connected with other believers, and we were facing some really challenging things. It was during the time when the values of homes and everything, it was tough, and we were very concerned. And what we would do is we would go and we would pray as a team for the company. And, that made such a difference. And then eventually the president joined us, which was awesome.
That is awesome.
And I just know it had a great outcome. It's going well. But we did just what you're talking about, Lance, and it makes a difference. I think that is a word for business people and an encouragement for them that God may have placed them in some of these companies that maybe don't appear to be Christian, but we are there as salt and light.
Yeah, that's right.
It's absolutely true. And you know something, I'm going to have to jump off this call, but Richard, I'm worried about this blue wave talk I hear out there with the primaries. Can you give me a quick update before I have to bail here and go catch a plane on what's happening with the blue wave?
Well, it's all about turnout. I've been saying this for a while now, and the danger is that the conservative evangelicals feel like they've done their job and gotten Trump in office and are now going to sit back on their brains and do nothing. And so we see in a lot of the primary elections that have happened so far, the special elections really is what we've seen in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, in Texas, or in Alabama and so forth, that the Democratic or the Democratic turnout has been a lot higher. And I think it's a matter of motivation. The left has been angry and fired up, and they're coming to the polls. And so it's just critical that conservatives and Christians don't just act out of emotion, but do their duty here and remember that we're stewards here over this nation. And we did have one good result recently, which was in Arizona. There was a special election there, and the conservative candidate won that election. Her name is escaping me for a moment, but that was a district that Trump won by 20 points, and she won it only by 5. So again, we need turnout. Now, coming up in May, just in this month that's starting tomorrow, there are 13 primaries for congressional seats. So this is the U.S. Congress. Debbie Lesko won in Arizona. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
But there's 13 primaries in May. There's another, dozen or so in June. So, we just want to encourage anybody that's listening tonight to make sure to get educated. You can go on the Truth and Liberty website, and you can find a link where you can get a voter's guide. You can register to vote through a link we have on there. And tell your friends, tell your pastor, especially in your church. Get your Christian and conservative friends educated. It's not once every 4 years. It's every year, and at least every 2 years. If the Democrats retake the House of Representatives, everything on Donald Trump's agenda, almost everything, but certainly his domestic agenda, will come to a screeching halt. And I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe that the church is going to rise up and do it. But we do want to remind people of the importance of voting. So,
and just to reiterate what you're saying, which cannot be emphasized enough, the blue wave. I saw a note come up. What's a blue wave? The blue wave is the surge of democratic activity that is trying to create a momentum out of a sense of national outrage in order to remove seats from Republicans in the Congress and in the Senate. And in a normal world, that is the normal way it happens, and it happens to every president. However, because of the unusual nature of what's going on with presidential politics right now, the Mueller investigation, which has no Russia anything, but has indicted 20 people on other stuff, is searching for anything to take this president down. And more than one person on the opposition party has said they can get Congress, they can get the Senate, they'll impeach this president. They're not only going to undo his economic plan. They're not only going to undo is you've seen people coming in over the borders on immigration, and it's like watch it happen. It's happening on TV right now. They want an open border, and folks, I'm telling you something. If Christians don't wake up, we will be responsible for having failed to steward a victory. When you get a healing, you have to be careful in a sense what you say, what you do to keep the healing going. You can, and Andrew teaches on this. When you get a breakthrough, you've got to stay through. You can't get apathetic, lethargic, or start saying and doing stupid things. So as the people of God, those of you that get this, I know that you're with me. I mean, the people that are with Liberty and Truth Coalition, they're there. But those of you that are just watching this, don't just sit back and go, well, what is this? And turn the channel or watch something else or go to a different, Facebook page or something. What you need to do is you need to make sure that you go to the truthandliberty.net website, also 7mu.com. That's where I take prophecies, intercession, and current events and give my incendiary worldview on it. And that's also where you can help to find a group and form a group to connect with other people to pray and get involved with your own election process. And so that's democracy, folks. We have to be engaged in the process. And I've got to be engaged in a flight right now. So if you'll excuse me, Richard and Karen, I must be questing off.
Thank you, Lance.
It's great to have you, Lance.
Have a great flight home.
Thank you, my friends.
All right, so Richard, we have some really good questions that I think that you can help answer. I mean, right on the heels of what Lance was talking about, James in Facebook says, what can we do to create a more invested and engaged body of Christ, especially in the political climate we currently see around us online?
Boy, that's a great question.
It is.
I think the fundamental issue, if you look at the broad picture in the body of Christ on this arena, is that we don't think the right way about the Great Commission, Karen. I think, for a long time the church in America has thought, well, the Great Commission means you just tell people about Jesus and get them to heaven. But that's really not what Jesus said. He said, go and make disciples of all nations, make followers of me of nations. And he said to go into all the world, and that means all sectors of society, not just all geography. And so really, we've just got to start talking about this and spreading the word and teaching one another. Engage your pastor on this subject. Engage your small group leader. Engage your friends. Study yourself. I encourage everybody to study the Founding Fathers. Look at what they said about the importance of government and the importance of education. It's amazing what they thought. The very first textbook in American education in schools, it's called the New England Primer. And it's just a little tiny, it's about that thick and about that wide. And that book, you go through it, and everything in it is based on Scripture. I mean, they go through A to Z and tell little Bible stories in this book, and this was used in our public schools. So the bottom line is we've got to get engaged. We do, and begin telling people and expressing our what we know, and it begins one person at a time. And if you don't mind, Karen, before we are done here, I'd like to just list the primaries that are coming up this month. Can I do that?
Please, yes.
So if you live in one of these states, then this is definitely for you. But Indiana, North Carolina, Ohio, West Virginia, and there's a very important Senate race in West Virginia. The Republicans might pick one up there. Idaho, Nebraska, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky, and Texas all have primaries in the month of May. So a primary is where you go to the polls and you vote in your party to choose who is going to be on the ballot in November for your party. So it's a very important election.
Richard, kind of explain why that's important, because a lot of people's thought process, if I'm choosing between two Republicans, okay, why do I need to go and vote?
Boy, that is a good question. Well, have you noticed how much difficulty President Trump has encountered inside the Republican Party?
It's true.
You have Republicans voting to secure the Robert Mueller against being fired by the president, opposing his tax plan, opposing all of these sound policies that he wants to enact. A lot of the Republicans are part of the swamp. And that's because Christians and conservatives stay home in the primaries, and they let liberal, swamp-based Republicans get elected. And that's where you weed that out in the primaries.
So, Richard, how do I know if I've got a choice between two people that I'm seeing as conservative and I would assume would line up with my values? How am I going to research and know which one to vote for?
Well, it's a challenge. One way you can do it is with voter guides, and you can find yours, from various sources. But we've got a link, so I encourage everybody to go there. You might have to do a little homework and look at their record and see how they voted, and do a little bit of research there. There's trusted resources out there which we're trying to put people in contact with here on our website, but it does take a little bit of digging. But one thing is, don't just take their words for it. You've got to look at actions speak louder than words. So examine what they've done in the past.
And how could I do that? I'm pressing you, but I want to make sure that people are really clear if they're going to go out and vote, that they make the right decision based on what they believe.
Well, there's one issue more than any other, I think, is the left hates, they mock us by saying that, well, you take abortion and make it a litmus test. But I'm telling you, if you know where someone stands on the question of pro-life, if I know where they stand on that issue, I can predict how they're going to behave in office 99% of the time. That and Israel are the two main things that determine, are they really operating from a biblical worldview? And so you might ask the question when you go to the polls in the primaries and then in November, where did my congressman or how did my congressman or my senator vote on funding Planned Parenthood? Planned Parenthood was exposed 2 years ago of selling baby parts. And it's unconscionable, and it seems to me that anyone who would vote to support that organization with tax dollars could continue to hold office. So just look up where they stand on that issue and how they voted, and I think that'll inform your vote pretty well.
Do you know, Richard, that's really helpful. It kind of simplifies it because it can be overwhelming for us that aren't in the world that you're in. And so quickly, if we can look at those two issues, you're saying Israel and how they vote on pro-life, that's going to give us a good indication.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. One thing I didn't mention is we have prayer ministers that are standing by. So if you would like prayer, you can call us at 719-635-1111. And if you've got questions on anything that we talked about tonight or want some resources to help guide you through some things, that's where you would call. Also, if Truth and Liberty has been a blessing to you, or you want to help us to get these live casts out to more people, we want to give you an opportunity to give to support Truth and Liberty. So you can do that two ways, actually three ways. One would be to text the word GIVE to 719-301-2552, and you can choose Truth and Liberty. You can call the phone center, that phone number that I just mentioned, 719-635-1111. Or if you are on the Truth and Liberty website, you can click on Donate, and you can give to support these broadcasts that way as well. So I just want to thank you again for joining us. Andrew is celebrating his birthday tonight, so we want to say happy birthday, Andrew. We hope you are having a wonderful birthday, and we love you, and you have blessed so many of us, so thank you so much.
Happy birthday.
And we will see you in 2 weeks on Truth and Liberty. God bless you. Good night.